We had a great sit down with Clinton Charlton to talk about his latest project, The Low Light of Winter, and its inaugural release, Sydney, Can You Hear Me? We also talk a little bit about his influences, and we get a little sidetracked along the way. And as always, he lets us hear a few sweet tunes as well. So sit back, sip your poison, and enjoy the ride. I'm your host, Kalen, and this is the Pagan Place Podcast.
A buddy of mine gave me a ADAT machine. Did you ever hear of these?
Yeah.
It's it was like a portable one. It belonged to Gary Middleholtz. He was like a reporter. I think it was CBC actually. Anyway, I'm looking for excuses to use that for something because it's cool. It's got 2 channels.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Jay Votor, you know that guy?
Yeah.
He's coming home at Christmas, and I think we're gonna do some guitar improvs and set up the ADAT to record it.
Oh, sweet.
Just for the sake of it being something fun to do. But I'm intrigued with that machine. Yeah. I like the limitations. 2 tracks, that's it. Can't overdub or anything. Just 2 tracks.
Interesting.
Be kind of fun.
That would be fun.
Yeah. Sounds good, though. Like a good quality stuff.
Yeah. Sometimes the limitations I find help bring other aspects of it out, too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's...
You kind of have to focus on a thing a little bit more, or you can't worry about layering something too much.
That was the whole reason I started like January through December, was so I had deadlines.
Strip it all down.
So I had to do something, you know what I mean? And then being a procrastinator, it would be like I'd get to the 3rd week of the month, be like, well, it's going to be what it is, I guess,
Yeah.
And every single time I'd be like, oh, that could have been better, but it's okay. It's okay.
I feel like when people procrastinate with stuff like that, one of the default aspects of what comes out at the end is stripped down in some ways. Not always. It's either always going to be really stripped down or overly dressed up. I think
I'm probably the latter.
You feel like you've...
Yeah, I tend to, like for my home recordings, I tend to clutter things up.
Yeah.
I consciously have to make an effort not to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I do the same with my stuff, but I mostly just don't know what I'm doing when it comes to
fair enough.
The music end of it.
I don't know that I do either, really, but but I don't know. Yeah, I just I guess, do you like your recorded voice?
No, but I'm used to it.
Okay. I struggle with it, especially singing. And so I think it's like some kind of, I don't think it's a conscious thing, but I think I'm unconsciously trying to cover up my voice and clutter up the recordings.
Okay.
I think if a psychiatrist was sitting here, I think that might be what the verdict they'd come to.
I can understand that with the podcast. When I started it, I hated my voice so much. I would just have the guest talking.
Oh, you would, eh?
You could hear me a little bit, but very minimalist. Even questions I asked, it would just sound. I edited it so it sounded like they were just kind of leading themselves into the next topic.
Really?
Kind of thing. Yeah, hated it. Hated how my voice sounded.
Fair enough.
And then I just I'm not over it yet, but I'm.
It's
used
common,
to it,
I think. I think it's super common.
Everybody hates how they sound. Even people that guests and stuff I have on the podcast, when they listen back to it, is that really how I sound? I'm like, yeah, you've ever heard yourself recorded?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of money on different microphones and it's got to be that mic, but yeah, no, that's how I sound.
My uncle one year for Christmas, he gave me a little it's a Helicon TC. It's
like the mic mechanic or whatever?
Yeah, it's like a pitch corrector.
Yeah.
I was like, are you trying to tell me something here?
I have thought about buying them many times.
It does work.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It does a good job.
For sure. Yeah. I don't mix my own music, so it's probably been used on me lots.
Yeah.
But I just don't know.
Right.
That's probably the case. I don't want to know otherwise, but probably is the case.
I think, not mixing your own vocals would be a treat.
Well, that's another, because we were talking about how I work in my little home studio. Because I'm not using a computer, so
right.
With the machine I'm using, it's a Boss BR800.
Okay.
So I can only play back 6 tracks at once. So, if have more than 6 tracks, well, I can't mix it anyway. I just can't. I'm not playing back 6 tracks. So
Yeah, right.
I always have to get help.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'll get independent this year. Hopefully I like it. I'm nervous.
Yeah, that would be a bit of a shift, I think. And it might really affect like how your music comes out in the end too. Like,
yeah, I mean, I've been real fortunate. Like with the January through December stuff, all of it was working with Sean Boyer.
yeah.
And Sean, by now, understands, what I mean when I say, like, oh, can it be bigger here? Or,
Right.
I want it to sound this or that in certain places. And he'd know what I would mean. Bill Preeper mixed the ambient record. And
cool.
We tried to, like, do some stuff over email and chat. And it just wasn't going to happen because I just don't have the vocabulary for the kind of music that we were doing, So he had to come over to the house, and I'm sure I pushed our friendships to the utter limits, trying to, when it goes bloop bloop. but I thought he did a wonderful job. But yeah, there were, it was, God, I don't remember what month it was, but it was winter, and there were like, let's go for a walk, like a lot of little breaks,
Yeah.
But yeah, it was good. We got it done in 2 days. So
Wow.
yeah,
That's impressive. That's
the mixing. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's a lot of music to go through in 2 days.
Yeah, he was great. Like I was off work at the time, and he came over with all of his gear, and we spent like 2 solid, like as if we were punching a clock, working days. And we took breaks to go for a walk and breaks to eat. But other than that, it was just mixing, like just going to work on it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really great.
What compelled that album? Because it is, as we talked earlier.
It's a good question.
It's not a complete departure, because as you mentioned, there is that ambientness. But
yeah,
it is a departure.
It is a departure for sure. I mean, nobody might be more surprised by me putting out an ambient record than me. But it's definitely grown the genre. It's something I've been listening to more and more, especially over the past 5 years. But it's the kind of thing that makes sense for me because I've always been attracted to like, the avant-garde side of pop music. Thinking back to like Granddaddy Records or like the Yankee Hotel Foxtrot album by Wilco. I loved all the blips and blops and the dissonant tones. And that's something that's always attracted to me, especially when married with acoustic instruments like Sea Change by Beck, if you know that record, or even more subtle things like The Animal Years by Josh Ritter. There would just be these little electronic tones that would creep into the folk music that would keep it from sounding like it was trying to be like neo-traditional or something, and it would be very now just because of that little squeal of a synthesizer at one point. And so those kind of things have always interested me, and it was things I started to try to bring into my own music. Even on my very first record I ever put out, These Stars We See, there were synthesizers on that record, and then it got a little more progressive when I did the first January through December in 2011. There were those kind of tones, using padded synths and building beds and drones for the song to sit on, especially with Chris Braden, who introduced me to a lot of ambient music. He's probably responsible for getting me into the genre, really. But then I had left, I was a trainer at IBM, and I had left the job that I was doing to take another job with IBM that involved me staring at spreadsheets all day. And I would put music on all day, but I would find music with lyrics too distracting. And then, so I tried, I'll take this as a time to get into some jazz that I've always, tried to find an indoor too. And, but again, I found it too distracting. And so I started listening to ambient music, and then I was starting to notice that I was finding artists I liked and artists that I didn't like, and parts of it that I liked. And suddenly this became a genre where I found myself buying CDs and having favorites, and it was just became part of my listening experience. But the long road here, to answer your question, I didn't know I was making an ambient record. I was doing January through December in 2018, my songwriting project. And I had started the song that ultimately is on the ambient record called Where the Lines Bend, They Break. But when I would put vocals on it, I didn't like it as much. And so, I just scrapped the vocal idea. And after that project had finished up, I decided I would, kind of work on this without words. And I really liked it. And it led to, the process of making that song led to building some more like that. And I didn't have any intention of making a record or anything. I was just putting things on my iPod and going for walks in the winter. That's when I found this stuff really like the best. It was like in the winter time when it was cold and things seemed dead and dreary. And then like I started noticing that some of them went together and complemented each other. And so I started, polishing on those ones. And then I started thinking in the back of my mind without saying, like, maybe I'm making an ambient record, And so I showed some friends and I got some positive feedback from some friends. And so I mentioned it to my buddy Bill, and he said, well, let's listen to what you got. And so I played him the 20 tracks or so that I had made, and we narrowed it down to what we thought made sense for a record together. And that's what we decided to put out. Yeah.
said there were some tracks that kind of felt or sounded like they went together.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there was something behind that, like something in you that was coming out in a way that, like as an example, have you ever seen the show Home Movies?
Yes.
Yeah. So there was one episode how they discovered at the end of every movie, one of the lines that was in every movie was, "And now you'll pay the price," or something along those lines. So that episode was them trying to figure out like why they were subconsciously sliding that into everything. And then, so I'm curious if there was something driving just how those songs evolved. And
yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean, I got sick. I think you know that from being Facebook. Like I ended up having a double bypass, heart surgery. Yeah. And I think part of what attracted me to the music subconsciously, and what was so therapeutic about making that music was just how calming it was. So I think part of the attraction to it might have been that, but thematically, I don't think there's a common thread throughout everything other than, that I hear my own tricks that I can do and my limited bag of those. I hear those in it. But, what I found was that all of the early tunes were very like weather based, there were things that were like influenced by, weather. And I think that that's probably common. I haven't got to talk to any other people that have made ambient music, but I assume that that's probably I mean, we talked earlier, you were showing me an ambient piece you made. And I think that that's probably a common thing. And 3 of those are on the record. There's a song called Tamir, which is like a weather based. There's one called Drowning Under Ice, which is weather based, and a third one too. And those were all kind of tied together. And there were like 3 or 4 other ones that I had made that all had this similar theme. And I thought about making that, the record, because they had a common thread throughout them. But ultimately, I just found that I was ignoring the record too much. Brian Eno had said that ambient music should be as easy to ignore as it is to listen to, but I found I was ignoring my own music, and that can't be good, So I was more attracted to songs like Somewhere Outside Sussex and Where the Lines Bend They Break, and so ultimately those are the ones that made it to the record. Right. But yeah, I love home recording. Like I love doing it. I had done the January through December in 2018, and I love doing home recording. The thing I found stressful every month was writing the lyrics and singing the song. And so when that was done, this was just a way to keep playing in my studio, keep making tones. Yeah, that makes sense. And, so that was a very fulfilling and joyful thing. And I thought it was just for me at first. Yeah. And that's, why when I decided I was going to put it out, I didn't want to use my name. I wanted to let it be just what it is. And something where I could play pretend and escape and be somebody else if I wanted to be, and I really love the anonymity of it.
And I think that's a great idea too. Especially where it is a departure. It kind of reminds me of, somebody like Conor Oberst. I don't know if you... Sure. He has like, scads of different projects that he's got his hands in, and some of them are just him. Yeah. And it's just, they're different. So it's just a totally different project. Yeah. This project has this soundish. This project has this soundish. And and I think that's fair. And it's a good way to separate your music, because it kind of is, at least for some people, a different side of them that's coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. In 2010, I got commissioned by the city to write our birthday song. It was like our 225th birthday in St. John. So I wrote our birthday song, and it was a commission job. So, I wrote it to what the job was. And so I made a poppy, snappy, upbeat pop song for this commercial that we were doing. And, then people would come to my shows, and I was doing what I do. And I don't know if you've been to one of my shows, but it's certainly not poppy and snappy and upbeat. And, it's a more folk singer-songwriter thing with an acoustic guitar. And I didn't want to put out an ambient record. And I mean, I'm back to playing shows. I wouldn't want to have somebody come to the show and be like, oh, what's he doing? Why is he singing? This is, so there was that to consider too, right?
Right. Yeah. Do you think you'll keep doing more of the ambient?
Absolutely. Yeah. What was great was when I had the time off from my surgery, because of COVID, everything was slow. So I ended up having 10 months off of work for what probably should have been 3 to 4 months. So, I was feeling good, and I had the house to myself. I mean, my wife was at work, my son was at school. So, after a while, I decided, wow, this is an opportunity to get some things done. And so I treated it like my job. And, I would get up and get myself ready and, like I was punching a clock, go into my studio and record and go for a walk call that my lunch break and finish up before everybody got home. And so there's a wealth of other stuff that I have. I have most of a follow-up EP done, but it feels very springtime to me, this collection of ones. So, I'll wait and put that out in the spring. But and so I've got a good jump on some other stuff too. And and I enjoy it. It's really fun. Like this feels like starting over in a weird way, and I love it. So
yeah, I mean,
I'll do more.
Kind of is starting over a little bit. It's, was it turning over a new leaf?
I got to learn how to do something live. Well, I don't got to, but I'd like to. I like the idea of being able to play something live. I wouldn't know how to play most of what I made on this record. I wouldn't know what to do, other than...
Yeah, that's fair. Could you do it alone? Or would you need a team to do it with you? That's a lot to figure out.
I wouldn't really, yeah. I'm not sure. I didn't have that thought when I was making it. So I've been trying to pay more attention with the stuff I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Like, okay, how could I do this? I'd be okay with backing tracks and that sort of thing, but I'd still have to have some kind of jumping point,
Right, yeah.
And the stuff I'm making as of late has guitar in it, which makes it a little easier. So
yeah.
And discernible, that is a guitar, so not buried in a bunch of delay pedals or something.
There was not that they're ambient. Well, I'm thinking of the Northern Arm. I've had them on the podcast before, and they do atmospheric, I guess.
Sure, post rock. Yeah.
And they've done like live scoring of movies and things like that. Cool. But when they were doing that, it reminded me of, I don't know if it must have been Explosions in the Sky. There was a live thing I watched of theirs, and
that's what they did.
And it was just like, kind of, but it was and it wasn't. But it was like, you're watching, like there's this big drop, and it's just projected on the drop, and they're kind of...
That's awesome.
Behind the drop, so with lights on them, so you can kind of see them, but you're mostly watching what's going on the screen. Yeah, and it's just like this visual aspect that goes along with the music. And
I think that's wonderful.
Stuff like that I've always
Me too.
It's just amazing. It's
Me too.
Cool, and it doubles up the art experience too, what you're getting at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's like when shows are most successful are when the audience are experiencing the show together.
Yeah.
And, things like that, because they're not the norm, what people are used to seeing, people tend to pay attention to those and experience them together. And that makes it wonderful. That makes it a really cool experience.
Yeah, it really does.
You're currently listening to the Pagan Place podcast. If you like what you hear, you can find us at anchor.fm/The Pagan Place, or stream each new episode wherever you get your podcasts.
I've existed in my head far more than in the public for the entire time that I've been making music, and kind of realizing now that that's doing myself a disservice. And, you know, what I mean by that is like, and it's literally just comes down to self-importance, but like, you know, saying, well, Clinton Charlton is this thing. And then there's another guy named Clinton Charlton who's the drummer for these bands. And then now there's this Clinton Charlton that's going to be the Low Light of Winter and make ambient music. And I'm realizing they can all exist at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe that, like, I'm going to turn 50 in March, and maybe it's just getting older, but, you know, I'm kind of wanting to embrace like all the sides of what I do at the same time, more and more. And so, like, I've thought, well, why couldn't I get booked for a show and play drums? Or why couldn't it be a bunch of drones? Or, you know, and maybe it would be weird, but so what? It's what I do. And sometimes it could be a singer-songwriter. Like, I guess I'm starting to realize that, you know, I should embrace everything that I do. And that's probably when I'm going to be able to make some good art.
Right.
So I'm excited at that thought. I think it could be a complete and utter failure at first, and maybe the entire time.
Well, yeah, maybe. But
maybe.
That's always a risk that you run, but it's the same thing with any kind of bit of self-discovery. Like, if you don't explore it, what's going to happen to it? Nothing.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, and that's what I mean about like the little boxes, you know? It's like the singer-songwriter box, like that guy, you know, I felt like he has to fit a certain mold, and you know, he wears a blazer, and he likes these records, you know.
Yeah.
And he can't have the influence of other things creep in, but there's other things that I like, you know, and I think that I should let them show, you know. Yeah.
One of the things I found for myself hardest about trying to be a singer-songwriter in any capacity is my brain is torn at any given time in 20 different directions of what I want to create.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time. It's partly because I have ADHD too, but it's focusing and harnessing. So it's firstly amazing that you've been able to focus and harness on that many separate things.
Yeah.
But why can't you do a plethora of things as opposed to, you know, fitting those persona roles?
Right. Yeah. And nobody's imposing that on me. It's all self-imposed, but I think it's what we do, you know?
Yeah.
I think anybody that's a performer has their own perception of what they do, and they try they're selling that image, you know? And I'm just tired of trying to sell any kind of image anymore, you know? I'm just there, you know?
Yeah.
But
no, that's absolutely fair.
I say that, and I realize that the Low Light of Winter is 100% what I'm trying to do, is sell a new image, but but at least it can be one where I'm not the character. I'm not the main character.
Yeah. I think it's something where there is no lyrical content. You know,
it's freeing.
Kind of its own, it can be its own thing. Like, something like that to me seems like it would be liberating, you know, in some sense. Yeah. Whereas it's obviously an influence that you've been having in your musical context and for a long time. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Like, and so to birth something like that, it seems logical. Rambled past my point.
No. It is liberating, and you know, but all of it is liberating. Like, it's liberating in so much as being a moniker is really liberating for it. Yeah. Because, you know, that doesn't have any of my self-imposed boxes that it has to tick off. You know, I can make whatever sound I want to make, because, you know, it's not Clinton Charlton, it's the Low Light of Winter, you know? Yeah. And that was really super freeing, you know?
If you kind of look at it as a whole, I feel like as a whole, it kind of works as a song. Yeah. You know, like, I feel like there's bridges, and I feel like there's chorus moments in the album.
You know? Well, it's funny because, so I was saying the first piece I ever started, and I didn't even know that I was making ambient music at the time, was Where the Lines Bend They Break, which I initially had titled Where the Lines Mend, because the entire ending section, my idea was that the song would mend into this loop that I had created, which was a minor key, more trance-like loop. And I just was like trying to butt these two pieces together that were never going to fit. And so while that was the first piece I ever started, it was the last piece I ever finished, because, you know, I had listened to more and more ambient music. I had started to really get into this artist from Toronto named Alaskan Tapes. and he was using drums, and I was like, gasp, that's allowed, And so I scrapped the entire end of that song and decided I would just, with a gong and some mallets, take it to a point where, boom, it would kick into a post-rock song. And, had I have not discovered that artist and heard that those things were permitted, I may have never done it, right? So, so it's a progressive thing, and that's the most traditional part of the whole record, is when there's those drums and those electric guitars and these recognizable tones,
Yeah.
But that part, now I would have never let that in. I would have thought that was against the rules, And it's funny how we self-impose these rules on things that we don't really know about yet.
Yeah. That little moment of discovery of hearing a thing, you're like, oh shit.
Yeah. That's the best moment though, and you go, that's part of me. That's in me. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what other influences musically have carried into this? In
the ambient music world?
Yeah.
There's a label called White Labrex, or like White Lab Records, and a lot of their artists appealed to me, and so I trust that label, and so that would be like a good sounding board. Where I discovered an artist called Glassbird, who's an anonymous artist, so they've been a big influence. Alaskan Tapes, the Toronto based artist, has been just an incredible source of inspiration for me. And a lot of that is because, there are a lot of traditional music elements that he's let into his music that I understand and identify with, where I can go, okay, I didn't know that I could do that, So that's been a really wonderful artist to discover. Some of the typical stuff like Brian Eno, Music for Airports would have been the first quote unquote ambient music record that I owned.
I think you mentioned him.
I probably did. I probably did. Yeah. I mean, he's a good starting point for most people, I think, into the genre. I still think that's a wonderful, wonderful record. Some of the neoclassical stuff like Niels Fram or A Winged Victory for the Sullen, that stuff feels beyond to me because they're using, orchestras to make it. But, I love listening to that stuff. I just recently bought a record by another artist off of White Lab Rex called Topics and Topographies. And they just released a record 3 days ago called Floating World. That's blowing my mind right now. So I've been listening to that, a lot. And so, there's all kinds of stuff. And I'm constantly discovering, new stuff that I like to listen to.
Yeah. Do you find any of your previous musical experience? I mean, it's kind of a half-dumb question because, of course, it has. But like anything you've written before, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
Do you feel like any of that has bled into this in any way?
Yeah, absolutely, of course, yeah.
You mentioned earlier there's certainly some ambient tones, and then that stripped down version, you can definitely pick up on that ambience.
Yeah. I mean, especially with January through December 2018, I was using a lot of keyboards, a lot of synthesizers, a lot of samples, a lot of drum machines, because drums are impossible to record in a little one-bedroom studio. So I mean, all that stuff was there. And what I'm having fun with now, especially with like the EP that I'm, trying to get completed and out for the spring, is going the opposite way and taking some of the tones and instrumentation and things that I know about from folk music and rock music and letting those into the ambient music. Yeah. And I'm really enjoying the new stuff a lot, like acoustic guitars that are, playing audible passages that you can tell that's an acoustic guitar. And it can be beautiful. Like one of the things I will do a lot is I will just sit in my music room, and I like to keep some guitars in different tunings, and I'll just pick one up and just play something over and over again that feels therapeutic and relaxing to me, just to play my acoustic guitar. Right. And I realized, wait, if it's relaxing me, it can probably relax somebody else, and that would fit into the ambient genre. So I'm going to let that stuff in, and that feels fulfilling and good and smart in a way, to allow that stuff in. Right. Yeah. So to answer your question, I found a lot of that crept into the ambient music, and I'm finding the reverse to be true as well.
It makes sense. It
does.
Really weird after I asked the question, really, if none of it had, but it's a lot of musical experience to turn off.
Yeah.
if it weren't the case.
And that was never going to be a question. Like I knew that would come into it, where the question for me was, is it enough? So it's fun for me. It's interesting for me. Does that mean other people need to hear it? And that was where I really struggled, because it's not a world that I know,
Yeah, no, that's
I
fair.
could write a song with lyrics and go, yeah, no, that'll connect with somebody. But to, to do this was like, eek. So, I really did. I made sure I chose friends that I could show the music to that would tell me like straight up, like, you're losing your freaking mind, man. And maybe I am, but I trusted them, and that was certainly an important part of the thing. So yeah.
Yeah, it's good to have sounding boards, that's for sure.
For sure.
Take my
I can see, like, I can understand what you're saying though, because it's not mathematically even what we're used to hearing.
Yeah.
Or, you know, somebody who just listens to radio music may not get it. I don't know, but
Yeah.
on the flip side of that, maybe they'll pop it on and be like, and like I said, relaxed, and
Yeah.
it can help you unwind. And
Yeah. And then, you know, there was also like the, okay, I'm going to put this out. And then there was the, oh, geez, there's going to be people that really know the ambient music genre that might hear this too, though. What are they going to think? And, you know, the whole record starts with a delayed 8-bit Casio keyboard drums. And I'm like, fuck, what am I doing? Like, you know? But I really didn't want to put that song first. But every time we were sequencing things, I was like, that made sense to put it first. So,
but in all fairness, though, a lot of that genre of music is, I mean, how do you label what is and isn't acceptable in it? Really?
well, that's just it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't, you know,
And
this
I-
is
and I
still
don't
what
think you
I'm
can.
learning, you know, is that I think maybe, you know, there aren't rules.
I feel there's not. Or there are maybe
Yeah.
far fewer than
Yeah.
maybe what you're used to.
Yeah. I mean, I've even got like on the stuff I've been doing lately, there's even some vocals, you know, they're not singable passages or anything you're going to walk away humming, but
Right.
they're my voice, you know,
Yeah.
and that's kind of cool. I didn't, you know, I'm realizing that's permissible too, you know, so more of that in the future too, I think.
And I think it can be anything you want it to be too. Like, and I'm sure
Yeah.
it is and will be.
I think so. Anyway, I'll keep doing it as long as it's fun.
Yeah.
You know?
That's the important part.
Really, at this point, it's so easy to, you know, I put this one out as a physical CD, and that was, you know, I'm glad I did. Like, I'm really glad I did. It makes it feel legitimate, you know?
Yeah.
As if I'm going like, no, I commit to this, and here, you know, I've spent money. There's my proof that I'm committed, you know? But, you know, I probably, like the EP, I probably won't. I'll just do it a digital only release. And that's so easy to do that,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, why wouldn't a person just keep doing it if they're enjoying it? Because it doesn't
I
cost
agree.
anything and there's
That's
no commitment.
One of my favorite things about the way music is going, and has been going for a while now,
Yeah.
especially since COVID hit, is people are just recording things and putting them out. And that's probably the biggest boon for music in a long time, is
Yep.
that ease of doing it, but also that ease of finding it. Bandcamp, it's my favorite website. It's favorite
Yeah.
app. Like, I just, ad nauseum. It's so
No,
hard to-
man, me too. And I thought about only putting like one or two of the tracks streamable, but I was like, I hate when people do that to me and I want to go listen to the record. So I
Yeah.
just made the whole thing streamable, you know?
What is your opinion? Like you said, it felt kind of a little more official that you have a CD, but
Yeah.
generally, what's your opinion on digital versus hard copies of music? Is that
I mean, I don't really have one. I have a collection of music. I like to physically own the thing.
Yeah.
But that's me. I like to sit down and look through the booklet, and
Yeah.
I like that. I feel like I own it if I have something physical.
right?
But you know, I don't think. With that said, there's a lot of music I listen to that that's not a possibility. You know, it has to exist on my iPod or, you know, streaming all day at work, and that's okay too. You know, I like those records. So I don't think I have an opinion in that regard. I hope physical mediums don't go away because I like it. I mean, it's a piece of art.
Yeah,
You know?
I don't think they will. I think they're kind of at their... No, I don't even know if it's at its minimum right now. I think it was a little while ago, and then records are making a comeback. And or they haven't for a
CD
while
sales
now.
have been up the past 2 years, 3 years in a row
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
So I know cassettes were climbing up again, too.
Yeah. I love cassettes. You know, I thought about doing a cassette, but I'm very conscious that I'm, you know, pushing 50 and it felt like too much of a hipster move. So, so I went with a CD.
That's an OG flex. That's allowable.
Yeah, you might be right. You might be right.
Like, I like the physical meat. Like, I love... If
Yeah.
I see a band live, I want to purchase that physical thing to take home with me. But I have friends that they don't. They just stream everything, or they'll get the... They'd love the PDF more than having the physical copy because it takes space or whatever.
Yes. And, you know, I think part of it is probably like growing up, you know, when I did, like the bulk of my formative years were in the 80s in Grand Bay, New Brunswick. And that was, you showed people your identity by the, you know, the pins that you had on your jean jacket or,
Yeah.
you know, and so, you know, for me, part of that's always been like, you could come to my home and there's shelves of my music and music that I've purchased, I mean, and they tell you a little bit about who I am. And
yeah, no,
I mean, that
agree.
might be part of my attraction to the physical medium as well,
Yeah.
kind of showing it off, right?
One of my friends was home from away and he came over. He's like, oh man, you still have a lot of these books. So he's looking through my book collection. It's like, so we were talking about books and he's like, you know what? I haven't just sat there and talked about a book or an album with somebody in such a long time because, they just spur conversation or whatever. Yep. Bring commonalities out.
Right. And you could, if it was a record, you can listen to that record together.
Yeah.
And that's, it's been a long time since people do that. Now it's like, oh, I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
Man, let's experience it together. Like I like that. I think it's not something people do enough anymore. I think. I don't know.
I try to do that like when I have people over. Like we'll take turns picking a record or whatever.
That's wonderful.
It's
great.
Yeah. I love it. It's a little more interactive. They get to look through things, talk things, as opposed to just taking turns popping a thing on YouTube. And I do that too sometimes. But
I started playing recently with this girl Catherine Kennedy. Are you familiar with her? Yeah. So she's this really great singer songwriter around town, and so last March I started playing in her band, and Sandy McKay's playing bass, and of course I've known Sandy for a long time. We've been in lots of bands together. But Josh McKinley, played in Jinx the Cat, and he's in McKinley Morrison Williams. He's the guitar player, and so getting to know Josh and Catherine has been a really wonderful experience. So just a few weeks back, we went on tour down into Cape Breton, and everybody brought CDs. And it was like we were all going like, here's some more pieces of me to discover. And everybody was really excited to like pop theirs in and talk about it and tell stories about when they got this and why this band was important. And I thought that was so like, it felt great. It felt like, like part of really getting to know somebody.
Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly. And that happens a little bit, I guess, with streaming stuff, but I feel a lot less.
Yeah, me too.
There's something about
it's colder
cracking open somebody's CD binder.
Yeah.
Going through it like on a road trip, especially. It's especially fun on a road trip. But
yeah, for sure. Oh my God, that's half. Yes. Yeah, that's half the fun is, and so half the fun was be like going through my shelves and picking out what discs I'm going to bring with me in the car.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I get 2 hours. I'll do it for a band practice in Hampton. Like, and I'm talking 20 minutes of prep work here. I get excited for it.
Yeah. I remember one time in particular, my friend Amanda, Adam and Amanda, they were moving away to Thunder Bay. They had 2 cars, so we wanted to drive them out. So I was like, all right, well, we'll drive. So Amanda and I took one, and her mom and sister took the other one, and we just took turns driving.
What are we talking, like a 2-day trip here?
Yeah, I was like, I think we took 3 days because we took an extra stop just to...
Wow.
But one of the things that we were both, Amanda and I were really excited about was the music.
Yeah.
For the road trip. So I even kept a list. Like we made sure every CD, like in order that we played it, we wrote it down on like a little notepad. I still have that list. And it was just like...
That is so nerd. I love that so much.
It was super nerd, but it was a lot of fun. And just figuring out what CDs we're bringing for the 3 days on the road was exciting unto itself.
welcome back to the Pagan place. Here, let me top up that poison for you. No, you keep the tip. All we need is a little like and share. That'll do just fine. There you go. Have a good day.
Epcom recording studio where my very first band would have made
Oh, really?
our first recordings.
Oh, wow.
Back in like 91, 90, somewhere in there.
Wild.
Yeah. Yeah, real bad. Real bad.
Is that still kicking around anywhere?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, actually, I recently put all like my old cassettes, on the computer. I digitized them. And so there's that. We did 2 songs there. That band was called Second Chance. And 2 songs I had written. Where Did the Time Go? And Lost and Scared were what those songs were called. But yeah, I put like everything that I had on cassettes on the computer and like old band practices and stuff like that. And what a trip. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
That
would
lane.
be.
Yeah, really fun. A lot of stuff from like O'Leary's. Yeah, really good stuff.
Oh, man. I have a couple old cassettes from some from even as far back as junior high, maybe. Just we'd start jamming and we'd just have a shitty boombox or whatever that could record.
Who would you have been jamming with? Anyone I know?
At that time, probably not.
How old are you? You're
40.
You're 40. Okay.
Yeah.
So I might know some people.
Back then, probably not. Well, my friend Justin LaBooth, he's more of like he's one of the only ones that really kept up with it, but he's like metal, metal guy. Yeah.
I don't know how I didn't growing up, all the metal, like Grand Bay was the metal bands. That's where I grew up, was in Grand Bay. I don't know how I didn't end up in, I've never played in a metal band. I wish I had. I would love it, but
it's never too late.
I physically would be so tired. But, and also I'm not capable, but yeah, I don't know how I never did. That's how it was growing up. It was like the metal bands were in Grand Bay, the punk bands were in Hampton, and like the rock and roll bands were in St. John.
Huh.
That was how it was.
Yeah, I guess a lot of the punk bands were like Hampton, Quispam kids when I was in high school and stuff.
This is all my perspective from when I was that age.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of them were.
I think so.
There was what would have been my young heyday of the St. John music scene. It was like back when Butterfly Effect.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. St. John's Greatest Hits, like that that era of
the Chuck T compilations. Yeah.
That was like my era of my initiation, I guess. Years of being in the music scene were that era.
Yeah, for sure. That band was that. You know what? I thought about this recently. I probably would never have gotten into ambient music, and especially this far, if I hadn't been in the Butterfly Effect.
Really?
Yeah, because those guys introduced me to the first rumblings of anything like that, like Mogwai.
Oh, yeah.
Sigur Rós.
Yeah.
Godspeed You Black Emperor. That was all introduced to. I wouldn't have known any of those bands.
Yeah.
That was all from, those guys, especially like Chris Fudge and Javo Tour.
Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So and post rock's only a stone's throw to ambient music, really. Chuck T had kind of poked us and was like, Cycle One's not online, guys. We should get that album out somewhere online, because we'd found out that one of the tracks from it, people were doing covers of it on YouTube.
Whoa.
So there was an Australian band called the Butterfly Effect that were kind of popular. So people would search for them and accidentally find us, but then like this song. And so they were doing covers of it on YouTube.
Crazy.
So Chuck was like, I think we could probably sell a few records if you guys put it out, And so we were like, well, if we're going to put it out, we should maybe include a new song or something to give somebody a reason to buy it,
Yeah. And that was you, Chris Fudge,
Jim Murphy, Javo Tour, and Mark Goslin.
Okay. Mark Goslin.
You probably know Mark, he does sound for a lot.
Yeah, he does. Yep. I've met him from some of the sound gigs.
Yep.
January through December.
Yep.
2 of those guys, or again,
the Butterfly guys,
Tour, have gotten to work on that as well.
Yeah, Chris did it in 2019. I was really thrilled that he did it. He did a bang up job, some really cool music actually. And then this year, Javo Tour is doing it. He's still. I guess he's got, we're in November here that we're talking.
Or one more
so
month.
He's got this month and next month to do, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been following, but the last month
here and there. I haven't followed the whole way through.
Okay.
But
the last month he put out a song called Accidental Heart, and it's just like it's a little barn burner. It's a great song.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's killer.
I'll definitely have to go through, and I did listen to a little more of the Chris Fudge
You did, eh?
stuff than Jay Vautour. Not to any fault of Jay.
You're in
I'm
school,
sidetracked.
you're busy. yeah, I get it. Yeah.
I don't get as much music as I'd like to.
No, I was thrilled that both of those guys. I don't know what to do with the project this year. I've kicked around the idea of doing it myself.
Yeah.
Because I can do it anytime I want,
Yeah.
But I'm not sure I will. I don't know. I've also I like the idea of giving it to people that I feel like want to make music,
Right.
and aren't sure how to do it. Like, I think it's a good project in that regard. Like,
Well, it sets deadlines.
It sets
kind of
deadlines.
forces you to
yeah.
do the thing.
And it's, you don't have to play live. It doesn't have a big audience. It's a nice, small, humble little way to go, okay, I guess I'm doing this,
Have you ever thought of releasing them as like a collection?
Yeah. I've been talking with Corey Bonavie
Okay.
as of late about doing some. What I want to do is I want to do like so I did 2011, I did 2013, and I did 2018.
Okay.
So what I'd like to do, since there's 7 years between those projects, is I'd like to kind of pick, maybe like the best 8 from that, touch them up, and put that out. And, that could be like volume 1,
Right, yeah.
And then Chris Braden did a year.
Okay.
And and Chris Fudge did a year, and Jay Vautour did a year. And I thought, well, it'd be cool to take some tracks from those and polish those up and touch those up and put them out. And that's something I'm eyeing for the future,
Yeah. No, it would be cool. I like the concept's amazing. I just like that idea. Just a good artist.
I like the idea too. And I like, it's not an original idea. Most of the inspiration and concept that I took was from a guy named Ari Hest, like an independent singer-songwriter. He was doing one a week, and I was like, I can't commit to that, But like when I did it in 2011 with the first year, like the introductory year, I had just released a record in 2010. I had that 225 single. I was playing in Penny Blacks. I was playing in some other bands. Things were really busy, and I was thought, well, what a fun time I'm having. I'll do this just as a way to make some fun home demos and stay active while I wrote for an actual follow-up record, which never, I never followed up. Like, there's never been a follow-up record, And so when I did it in 2018, after life had taken some unexpected twists and turns and whatnot, it was a much different reason for doing it. And it was like, I need a way back into being creative here, and I don't know how to do it. And so, having that project was such a treat. And that was when I realized, like, hey, Chris Fudge, you should do this because it exists for this reason. I just didn't know it then.
Right.
And so that's, being able to get Chris and Jay to do it, knowing that about the project was really, I felt a lot of gratitude to both those guys for doing it. And I know that they got what they needed out of it,
right.
Which is cool. And so I love that it exists, and for that reason,
Yeah.
it exists for a different reason than I ever knew it did back in 2011,
Right.
So, and I like that it's become that, because it can do things for people that I respect and, want to see do things. It's all silver linings. Yeah.
What else do you kind of have on the docket, like, going forward?
Musically?
Yeah.
So Jessica Ray will release a record in the new year, and there'll be some shows, so I'll play with her for that. I've been very busy these past few weeks and months with the Catherine Kennedy Band, and that'll continue into the new year. Super excited for that. Penny Blacks has a new lineup, and I'm really excited about how Penny Blacks is sounding, so Penny Blacks will continue into the new year.
Sweet.
And I had mentioned I'll do that EP, so I'll do that. I'd like to see myself make some music with lyrics and some singer-songwriter music this year. I hope to. My friend Chris Braden recently revitalized his Something French band from...
I just saw them.
Did you see the show?
2 weeks ago? Yeah.
I couldn't make it, but...
It was cool. It was
yeah.
good.
But I'm super inspired by that. I love that he did that. And that kind of makes me want to get off my ass and make some music in that regard too. So yeah, but lots to do.
Yeah.
Bonnet House is talking about making another record finally after so many years. And we're even, we were just texting earlier tonight actually about trying to book some dates in January and February together so we can make that happen. And that excites me.
Yeah.
I'd love to, I'm so proud of that record. I'd love to get back to.
And that's with Bill Preeper and
Sandy McKay.
Sandy McKay.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that record. I don't know. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That was a special one for me, that record. I've always wanted to follow it up because I hated that we were like a one-off, So I think it'd be cool to do another one.
Well, it's hard too when you all have your hands in so many cookie jars.
Yeah.
So it's got to be really hard to find the time for those types of projects.
For sure. And I mean, Bill and Sandy are both in Jess's band, and that's it's hard to go, you guys want to get together in Bill's living room in February, when we just played the Imperial Theater with her. It's not as, it doesn't carry a lot of appeal. But, I think we're all ready for it, and it should be good.
St. John amazes me, in so many ways. Like,
yeah,
a lot of times I would go out and it's like, how do we have this many musicians? This many great musicians.
It's crazy.
Well, I've had a couple conversations where I've been asked to recommend people for things or whatever. So, my friend was looking for singer-songwriters.
Okay.
And he was just kind of drawing a blank. I was like, oh, well, shit, let me
There's
just
a
name
wealth
off
of
a few.
them. Yeah.
And then I was just like, before I knew it, I had like 20 names.
Yeah.
I was like, Jesus. And then my friend Dave, he was like, oh, he's putting a St. John playlist together. And he's like, well, I need some current St. John bands. And off the top of my head, I was like, oh, I don't know. COVID kind of stifled a bunch. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, no, actually, these guys are still going. These guys are still going. These guys are going. These guys are. And there's just so much. And it blows my mind every time I really stop to think about it. Like,
I know.
Is there anything that you wanted to mention or bring up or talk about that maybe I...
No, it was like I say, it's I knew that, I thank you for having me on, but I knew that it was going to be a hard thing to talk about because it's a thing that we're used to talking about, I guess, a type of music.
It's very true. It's not something you talk about in traditional.
Yeah, no, I just wanted the opportunity to talk about it, and thank you for that. And it's always fun to just get to sit down and chat music with you. Anyway, I love that we go off into about 50 different roads.
Yeah. Those are some of my best episodes. I'm not gonna lie. The ones that go off on those great tangents, I love. Personally, I love them. I don't know how other people feel about them.
No, it's good.
But I love them because that's when you get the real scoop on the person behind the music. Really is
100%.
All those things are quite often what make up what they're putting out there in a lot of ways.
I think you're right. Yeah.
That's why you read biographies on people, right? You get those great side stories.
Yeah. I know. I hear them and I'm always like, the ones that like I listen to where I'm like, I really enjoyed that, or the ones that went off the rail. But you always want to be the one that has the polished answers for everything.
Yeah, it is a great album, and I was surprised because even though you told me it was going to be an ambient album, it still wasn't what I was expecting. And I don't know what I was expecting. Like, I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe something not as ambient, I guess. I don't know.
Okay. The first, it's funny because I think you can almost see my nerves in the first two cuts they're ambient tracks, of course. But the first one's got drums in it. The second one's got that big post-rock ending. And I do think that those songs make the sense for the first two songs for that record. But then it really gets into the more what you'd consider ambient. And it's probably not a mistake that I did put that stuff a little later. To me, this is how it was supposed to flow. But there also was probably some subconscious, like, I can't do that just yet, stuff. But yeah, it does get pretty traditional, like air quotes, ambient.
Yeah.
Especially in the middle of the record. Yeah.
Mostly in the mid, like
my favorite cut on it is the second to last one called Tamir.
Yeah.
That's my favorite one. That's the one where to me it sounds the most like what I set out to do.
Okay.
I intentionally wanted that song to sound like that, and I think it it sounds like what I set out to do with it, you know.
Okay.
The title of that one is the name of a Russian ship. It's an icebreaker. And, you know, to me, that song feels like, you know, after freezing rain and drowning under ice, you know, I think of Tamir is the third part of that theme. And to me, that one sounds like, you know, when you're getting through things and, you know, it feels cinematic and big to me. It just does. But maybe listeners won't feel the same way. But to me, that one feels like that. And that's what I wanted it to feel like.
Yeah.
You know.
Thanks for taking some time and
Thank you.
shooting the shit.
This is Andrew from Crows Outreach St. John. You've been listening to the Pagan Place podcast. Follow us on Instagram at crows_outreach or find us on the street, carrying food and warmth and harm reduction supplies for the people of St. John.